So, welcome everyone. Welcome to Launching Park Prescriptions, a step-by-step guide. My name is Sarah Coles, and I'm the Executive Director of the Texas Children in Nature Network, and we're excited to have you with us today. We are recording our session. Thank you so much for joining us. To save bandwidth for our attendees and for a clean recording, we ask everyone to turn off their computers and mute themselves during the presentation. I will be monitoring the chat so you can share your questions there, and I will share them with our presenter. Please remember to keep the comments in the chat kind. Julia Hill is running tech for us today. Thank you so much, Julia. As I said, we are recording this session and I will share it in a follow-up email. If you are uncomfortable with your name showing, you can change your name to anonymous and private message Julia with your name for our attendance. Also, if your Zoom name doesn't match the name you registered with, please change your name or let Julia know. If you're in need of a certificate and do not have your name, and we do not have your name, we will not be able to provide you with that certificate. Just a reminder, if you're needing a certificate, you'll need to email the address provided in the Zoom link email at the end of this workshop. I'm going to go ahead and do our land acknowledgement. Texas Children in Nature Network is headquartered in Austin, and as such, I'm on the ancestral and unceded land of the Tonkawa, Comanche, and Sana people. Our ongoing colonial presence on indigenous lands compels us to take action now to counteract the effects of colonization. The work we do through the Texas Children in Nature Network is one small step towards that effort. And in just a few moments, I'm going to put some links about land acknowledgements and those people groups in the chat. For now, I'd like to go ahead and welcome today's speaker, Kai Harkey, with the visitor experience. He's also been an active member in TCNN for quite a while. Welcome, Kai. So glad you could join us and take it away.
Thanks, Sarah. Hey, everybody. I'm glad to be here. My name is Kai Harkey, and gosh, my introduction to the Children in Nature Network was 2010, I think it was. I was doing community outreach for REI here in Austin and got to be the benefactor of relationships with Molly Stevens and Hayden Brooks, Nancy Herron, and anyways, contributing to both the Austin Children Nature Network, the Texas Children Nature Network, and some involvement on some different steering committees at different times with the national committee. Everyone, my name is Kai Harkey, and um, in my conservation career, I celebrate this June. I celebrate 20 years in conservation. 20 years ago, I took off to a Student Conservation Association internship up in New Hampshire, Julia, not too far from you, and it changed my world. In those 20 years, two major accomplishments I'm proud of. I served as the director of interpretation for Texas State Parks. I was there with that team for 11 years, ultimately getting to influence the visitor experience for 10 million visitors every year to the 88 state parks. And the second thing I'm most proud of is having launched the visitor experience 2.5 years ago. My little piece of the world where I try to spread joy, protect parks, and serve visitors. In 2.5 years, some of the folks that we've been able to help out with different programs and projects. But it all started here. Just giving a quick bit of context for all of these conversations. Um, our impact on visitors doesn't have, it's not a one and done. Y'all know this very well. It's not a one and done. This is the photo of me when my parents introduced me to the outdoors for the first time. This is me at a state park, McKinney Falls State Park, just down the road, on my little staircase to stewardship over the next 40 years, as I developed a closer and closer relationship with nature, felt that sense of belonging, and went back and helped other people out. In case you are not convinced this little guy's me. Um, little context of who I am, where I'm coming from. You right now are taking time out of your day to sit on a webinar to learn about how to connect people with nature through park prescription programs. I would love to have you put in the comments, what is your why? Why are you here? What are you interested in? What has led you to be interested in continuing to, or for the first time, launching some park prescription programs? And I'll phrase it as well. I'll take one out of the playbook of Molly Stevens. If in your relationship with park prescription programs, if you would launch one, if you continue yours, if you were to be wildly successful, what does that look like? What are your goals? And just based on a couple of the groups that I'm seeing in the chat box right now, I'm thinking, sharing a relationship with natural history, and maybe relationship with the Whitty Museum itself. Um, our friends Jack at Chestnut Hill Reservoir Conservancy, maybe there is both a mission-driven focus on connecting people to nature through park prescriptions, maybe a site specific as well to raise awareness for Chestnut Hill. I'm guessing.
Yeah, Kai, we've got an answer from Sarah Nielsen. She says helping people tap into nature and feel how it can impact their emotional and physical well-being. And she's with SG Wellness. And then Julia saying works well with therapeutic horticulture.
Great, great. Thanks, y'all, for those contributions. Sarah, good to see you here. And many, Sarah and many others here, both Sarahs and many others here, great champions for connecting people with nature. Renee, thank you for that, helping all children connect to nature and raising awareness about the benefits of nature from an advocacy perspective. Great. Love it. Keep those comments coming. I'm going to keep moving. Wait, why Kai? Why is Kai talking here? This is last Halloween. My wife and I both dressed as Teddy Roosevelt. Why am I here? I'll give context real quick, and Sarah has heard this story before. Sarah, the first time I heard about the park prescription program, I'm sure it was 2010, I think it was, at the inaugural Texas Children Nature Summit. And all of us on this call have, I'm sure, at different time or another, heard about uh, park prescription programs. And I will assert that as long as we've all heard about park prescription programs, it's been a bit of a difficult nut to crack. And so it's been now 2.5 years since I launched my business. I'm working for myself, so I've got some latitude to be, experimental and creative. And Sarah Coles, as you convened us in Houston a couple of years ago at the summit, we had a keynote from Dr. Melissa Lim. And in that moment, hearing about her work and the Parks RX Canada efforts, I was so inspired to do anything I could to make this process easier. In general, whenever I think about my business, the visitor experience, I say, I've never met a nature professional with too much time or too much money. All of us are short on time, all of us are short on money. So my effort, Sarah, like what that moment inspired me to do was just try to curate a little better what's out there and how to do this. I will invite y'all. I suspect many of y'all are on a computer. You probably have a phone nearby you. Um, I've I've included a lot of QR codes in this presentation. Please feel free to engage them as you want more information on a different topic. So long story short, Dr. Melissa Lim, her talk there, Sarah getting us together at that summit inspired me to want to just make those resources more accessible and dive into a couple projects I'll talk about. So I consider three major building blocks of a park prescription program. Number one, I'm just going to go through this. And again, a lot of wise people on the call will give some time at the end I'd love to hear questions. I'd love to hear comments, additions, and everything. If you have anything pertinent to a slide I'm on, please feel free to drop it in the chat box. So I think the first thing, if we were to break down a park prescription program into three tangible pieces, the first thing I think about is that building relationships. You are a program, or you are a site, or you are a network. You have some organizational entity, maybe a physical entity in a site, the Whitney Museum, Hill Country Reservoir Conservancy. And we are trying to build relationships with our healthcare advocates, the nurses, the doctors, the healthcare providers in some way. So the way I think about this is first thing to build in relationships to me is the practice of finding your champions. This is true, I think, for any real initiative. Who is your person on the inside that can help be a champion, help be a liaison to that community? So that's what I did. I started out, Dr. Andy Jones, a friend, medical director of the McCarthy Clinic, which is a part of Ascension group. Sarah came back from that Houston summit and just started throwing down ideas paper, curating resources that are out there, including resources from Parks RX Canada, and engaged Dr. Jones and said, "How does this look? What does this feel like the right building blocks?" And we had a lot of back and forth as we refined the resources. Um, and the McCarthy Clinic now has a small pilot program, has for about a year now. Park prescription resources, both posters, pads. A second contact, a champion I engage with, Aaron Leonard is the Chief Executive Officer of Guardian Revival, a nonprofit program that supports veterans all across the country. And we'd work together whenever I worked for the Texas Children and Nature. Sorry, when I worked for the Texas Outdoor Family, we'd worked with Aaron, helping to do learn to camp programs. So, big picture, this is the concept of finding champions. You have champions in the healthcare industry that can help give you wisdom and feedback. Maybe you have champions at specific sites that can implement park prescription programs. Find somebody that kind of understands where you're coming from and let them be your champion, your liaison into the larger community that otherwise is difficult to crack into. Building relationships, find your champion. In that second, if you don't feel like you have a champion or you want to go with a specific partnership where you do not have an existing insider, how are we engaging new partners? And just to make it easy, it took a lot of resources that are out there, compiled them into a single draft letter that is meant to be off the shelf, 80% the way there. This is this all on the website. Will have many QR codes that are pointing to my park prescription website. This one specifically is looking at this letter that is meant as a template for engaging healthcare providers. So I'll pause real quick. I'd love to see you drop some comments in the chat box. Who are you interested in engaging with? What is the site? What is the provider? Who are you interested in building a relationship with for your park prescription program? I'll give you all a second in case anyone wants to drop comments in. And I will just kind of throw out some ideas real quick, right? There is where are patients going, Sarah Nielsen? Dell Children's would be a dream. And via Texas Children Nature Network, having some conversations there. Um, who are you engaging? So, what are these groups? There is, of course, the big hospital groups, which can be challenging to get in with. There are older adults. There's a lot, Julia. I know of many senior serving healthcare institutions, and even in our Parks and Rec programs, senior programs that might be part of a formal uh, park prescription program coming from doctors and healthcare providers, but also about half of the customers I've worked with just want to do some kind of park prescription program as an outreach tool. Sarah passing out a prescription notepad meant to engage folks. And Renee, great to hear engaging medical students, pediatric residents, pediatricians from a resource education perspective. Great, mentoring medical students, start them young, or start in their career in understanding the health benefits of nature. Great, keep those comments coming in. So who do we have in mind when we're thinking about building those relationships? So step number one is building the relationship. Step number two, to me, is that conversation where we are communicating of course, speaking a lot of times, most of my experience has been the nature professional in the broad sense. It's having to convince the healthcare provider. I hope it sometimes is the other way around. But oftentimes I'm thinking about us as nature professionals engaging healthcare providers. So we want to communicate the why, the what, and how. And that's what this section is about. So sharing the evidence, gosh, we know that the Children in Nature Network has a tremendous collection of resources. No one will have trouble finding the uh, different research studies showing the value of time spent in nature, healthier, happier, and smarter. We all know this well. I've curated what I feel like were some of the most potent resources there. I think I probably pulled these directly from Texas Children in Nature Network, or maybe the National Children in Nature Network. But This is one very important study, and if you're not familiar directly with, again, Parks RX Canada, these are the sources that they highlighted. Research shows significant health and well-being impacts when we're spending 2 hours in nature per week, and the most cortisol level drops when we're spending 20 to 30 minutes per day. So I'm sharing this to you now, not trying to preach to the choir. You probably know this, but as an effort to curate the most impactful research studies for us to have a conversation with the healthcare providers. Again, QR code on the right side. These are not hyperlinks right now, but QR code on the right side goes to the website where we have this all together. So that to me is important information to share when what are healthcare providers motivated by? They're motivated by real patient outcomes. And so important to those come to mind. Um, again, Parks RX can expand on that 2 hours, 20 minutes, 2 hours per week, 20 minutes at a time. We'll come back to that in a second. And I'll just burn through this super quick on the website in the link that Sarah dropped in the chat box. But major motivators for our healthcare providers are the most common diseases that they are seeing in their patients: obesity, high blood pressure, bad sleep, heart disease, and of course, many other topics in the Children Nature Library. I'm watching the chat box. Drop any questions if you have it. We all know that there's a lot of great resources and research out there. This to me is curating what is a good starting point for this is not magic, or this is not made up. This is real. Here's the research to support it. So we're communicating with our healthcare providers. And the second thing I think about, so if you think about the first part, share the evidence. This is our why. This is us getting to say, okay, yeah, it makes sense. I'm on board. Now, what do I do? What should I say? What does that conversation look like for patients? And I've been on both sides of this, but I'm really trying to adopt and believe in the patient first mentality. I'll tell you what I mean by that is I've spent time with Texas State Parks, where my personal goal was raising awareness at times, was raising awareness for Texas State Parks. I'll come back to this in a second, but it would not be in the best interest of the patient to tell them, if you want to go to nature, drive an hour over there to a Texas State Park. So this conversation we're about to go into is a patient first, 5-step approach to what a doctor or healthcare provider is actually going to recommend to patients and what that conversation looks like. Jack, good question. Is there an index of docs that have participated? Sarah, if you don't mind, I bet you know the best resource with Dr. Czar and the Park RX program. Jack, I think we have a link coming for you. But yes, Dr. Robert Czar of Parks RX America, I think, it has a list of providers that are on board. So a 5-part plan for what a healthcare provider is, what kind of conversation looks like with their patients. This is straight from Dr. Melissa Lim. Nature is the fourth pillar of health. In addition to diet, exercise, and sleep, nature is number 4. Having that conversation to help doctors and their patients understand that these are the big 4 we're going to focus on. Emphasize written prescriptions. This is interesting research to show that if your doctor just says, hey, you should spend more time in nature, great, okay, I might do that. But when we actually go through the process of writing the prescription down, this research, again, linked in that QR code, all of these are, shows that we have moved the needle when it is written down. Okay, patient is coming around to it. Okay, I'm interested. You tell me to spend time outside. Now what? This is, and I'll come back to this in a second, but this is our healthcare provider providing a what, when, and where conversation with the patient. That's a lot of text there. I'll come back to this. A what, a when, and a where. and two more pieces of our five-step conversation between healthcare provider and patient. Fourth is monitoring progress. I'll just kind of give a tangent that there are a lot of people out there that are really motivated in measuring the impact of prescribing park time in nature. I'm not one of those. I think that that is important, but for me, sometimes we have to practice. Don't let the perfect get in the way of the good. And I do not personally have an app I use or recommend. They're out there, but I worry that sometimes aiming for the perfect in terms of tracking their progress, getting that measured with results, um, that sometimes that might be a non-starter. Um, we can argue either side of that for sure, but one way or another, we want to monitor progress with our patient. And lastly, leading by example. Renee, if our medical students and our healthcare providers are actually spending time in nature and they can recommend where to go nearby, those have real impacts with our patients as they are understanding the healthy lifestyle that my doctor is leading is one I can imitate. So those five steps for the provider to patient conversation and the what, where, when of that, all viewable here. I do have that as a downloadable PDF that you can modify and it can become a part of a standard operating practice at a hospital or healthcare clinic. Let me pause. Again, I'll watch the chat box if anybody has any questions, comments. There are a lot of wise folks in the room, and as I mentioned, just trying to done our best with curating a lot of resources, and would love any questions and comments as they come through. So, Sarah, that 2 years ago now, year and a half ago, I guess, leaving Houston, me leaving Houston, and hearing Dr. Melissa Lim speak, feeling super inspired. Two major outcomes I focused on was one, curating the best practices, trying to get, okay, here is an actionable plan that anybody could follow to start the conversation. It's always going to look a little different. Maybe actually it's six-part plan. Great, go for it. But I don't want the lack of a blueprint to mean a lot of motivated people don't start anything at all. So if the best practices was one, kind of the tangible resources were the other. So thinking about the role of park prescription pads and posters. Google around park prescription pad images sometimes and see what you see out there. And I want to ask you, what's wrong with this? If we're talking about prescribing time in nature, what is wrong with a park prescription program where the tangible park prescription looks like this? The biggest thing that I saw, think on that, drop comments in the box if you'd like. The biggest, something wrong with me. I like good thinking on that, Julia. The thing I think about is the most is we know that Sarah says visually flat. We know that doctors and healthcare providers are really short on time. And if you'll know the paradox of choice, this idea of like, well, you could do anything. Sometimes it's hard to do anything at all. And so when you have a park prescription pad that's, maybe says nature prescription pad, spend time in nature. Well, I'm really busy. What am I supposed to write there? There's so many different directions it could go. And so in conversations with my champions in this conversation, worked on refining what that looks like. And this is what I came to. This is gosh, I should have had a physical copy next to me. 4x6 notepad, real common for a part prescription size. And I'll just tell you like why I went this direction. One, you know, if we're trying to sell the outdoors, we're trying to say this is a place you belong and you would have fun and you'd be comfortable. Having a place-based image that's visually engaging to me helps open the door to This is the place you're going to enjoy, whatever that might look like. We've done a lot of different examples. So something's visually engaging. Doctors are short on time. We wanted to give options that just boom, check, check, check. So you'll see that there are places in here we have options for add in some different information, but think about taking 60 seconds to write a prescription or 10 seconds or 30 seconds or 10 seconds. That is real whenever when your medical group is asking you to see 30 patients a day. So check boxes for what to do outside. Um, the time recommendations, taking this again right from the best practices curated from Parks RX Canada. The default is 20 minutes a day and 2 hours per week. That is specific, that is actionable for our patients. Leaving in there, of course, the opportunity to do something more custom for any reason that might make more sense for the patient. And a call to action in the QR code. So whenever I reference a patient first goal and an approach, this is a lot about what I think about. And so what that QR code is in our different uh, park prescription programs that we've launched has either been an outreach tool, raising awareness for an organization, the Texas A&M's Center for Health and Nature as one example, kind of more of an outreach approach. Um, and with the VA, the Veterans Administration in the Bronx, that I'll show here in a second, it was some more specific locations. We want this is the website that is the next step for a patient moving into the outdoors. So I'm here in Austin. If I had to pick a single, Julie, if I had to pick a single website for to link in that QR code, I'd probably pick Austin Parks and Rec. I can't remember, probably has a map viewer or the Austin Parks Foundation, a map viewer, something that really makes it easy for a patient to see, oh, this is the nearest place near me. And this is the backside of the park prescription pads that we recommend and we use. Had a different conversation with Sean Garland out of the Veterans Administration. And it just like had such a good, simple idea. It was like, it'd be great if they had some way to track it. Oh yeah, like, and again, there are options out there for tracking time in nature with an app. Awesome, good, go for it. But the world's most simple calendar minute tracker on the back of a prescription pad that you magnet onto your refrigerator is a good first start. And that's what I wanted to create this 80-20 principle, create things that like this is going to work for 80% of people and it's easy and it's turnkey. So that's the back of what we use a lot on our programs. So this is a project that just launched, took 15 months to launch a pilot program with the Veterans Administration in the Bronx. I mentioned earlier, Aaron Leonard and Joe Arcs Coalition were our champions that had a relationship with the staff at the VA and had a lot of back and forth conversations to get this design right. If I remember correctly, I don't know if that's the Brook, and they had to go communicating to a veteran why it matters. And this was actually a survey that they're rolling out. So share your experience for keeping track of how many minutes per month. And really just, of course, one big effort. The idea there is start the habit. Cool. Jack, thanks for the recommendation. Clockify app to keep track of my time in the parks for volunteers. Love it. It doesn't have to be a nature specific time tracker. Hey, here's a good app for tracking time, doing any number of things, working with volunteers or whatever it might be. That one good, simple method for tracking time. Tracking time helps us be aware of it, helps us build a habit. That's a link to the website. Or, sorry, that's a mock-up from the website that some of the work that we're doing to try to streamline the park prescription pads. And I mentioned pads and posters. This is the poster. So if the pad is what is in the closed doors of the office handed to an individual, how many different, bad or old posters exist in your doctor's office right now? Putting something up that speaks for itself. And that might be, Sarah, maybe that's easier to do than have a doctor um, prescribe time in nature, given, they're busy. Just putting a poster up as we work some up for the Texas Children in Nature Network that hits on some of these same concepts and has a good call to action within. And this is the one that they'll actually put up in the Bronx VA, the New York Harbor Veterans Administration and other support. So if one big piece of support is the tangible resources, the second big piece of support is making sure your healthcare providers understand what access looks like. There's a lot of very real barriers to having places to go outside. Have conversations around what that access looks like so they are informed as they're recommending information to their patients. Organize park visits for medical professionals. If you, Jack, and others, if you work at a physical site, or maybe you don't, Jack, but you're connected to physical sites, having a tour, a field trip, getting to see, so they understand maybe not only the physical built environment for their patients, but different programming opportunities and feedback and engagement. Using these events as opportunities for healthcare providers to grow and change. And again, actually, it's not a four-step; it's a five. It's not a five-step; it's a four-step or a six-step or whatever. Keeping that conversation going. Big picture. Again, we're talking about building relationships by finding new champions or engaging new partners. When we have our platform for having that conversation, communicate the why, what, and how, sharing that evidence in that five-part park prescription plan, and offer resources like park prescription pads and posters and the other support like we mentioned here. Cool. Um, I'll stop on that slide. QR code to the best practices we talked about, QR code to the physical pads that we talked about. And again, a lot of wisdom in the room, in our virtual room right now. I'd love to hear questions, comments, what has worked well for you, what have been challenges that you've dealt with in our, let's say maybe we could probably do like the final 10 minutes or so.
Nothing yet. Oh, Jack just unmuted himself. So go ahead. Please go ahead, Jack.
I was just trying to figure out if I could unmute myself. I just want to say briefly that I'm a recent startup nature conservancy effort. Chestnut Hill Reservoir Conservancy. I've been around a year, and we're just getting things together. And I stumbled onto this prescription concept. I can't even remember how. I think it was from a blog on a website or something. And I've just recently finished listening to the book that the woman wrote, Holt. And it's basic. It's pretty basic, and it's a rather astounding how simple the whole concept is. And I've got a personal experience with regard to recovery, and I'm very enthusiastic about this. And there's so much to do, and major connection. Boston, as you know, is probably the mecca of medical destinations, and so there's got to be a million people that I can tap into here, and this is a great springboard.
Great. Hey, thanks for sharing, Jack, and all the best as you're growing up. The Chestnut Hill Reservoir Conservancy sounds like a great organization.
And Jack,
Sarah Nilsson, do you want to? Sorry, go ahead, Sarah Coles.
Jack is someone who went to Boston College and spent a lot of time in Chestnut Hill. I appreciate that.
Was that Sarah Coles?
Yes.
Oh, we have to talk. I've got to launch. Okay, we'll talk.
Um, Sarah Nielsen of SG Wellness, a great advocate for connecting folks to nature for health benefits. Sarah, do you want to speak at all to the trans theoretical model of behavior change? I'm not familiar.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, y'all. So, I work in behavior change, and so that's getting people kind of along the stages of getting ready to make a change. Okay, so let me back up. Hold on. How many steps are there? So it's the trans theoretical model, TTM. It's Procrosh and Di Clemente are the authors of that theory. And it basically says that when we are trying to get adults and children to adopt healthier behaviors for their well-being, they go through about 5 or 6 stages of change. And so it's a little bit of a staircase model. So we start at the bottom with what's called pre-contemplation. And pre-contemplation says that if you have a person that's in pre-contemplation, they're saying, nope, this is not for me. I'm not a nature person. Leave me alone. I'm not ready. Contemplation looks like, oh, I might do this. This research is interesting, and you can kind of, they start to crack open their brain a little bit and they can accept kind of what they're hearing. Then we want them to move into what's called preparation, which is I'm getting ready to spend time in nature with this park prescription. I've received my prescription, but I haven't actually taken action yet. The next step is, of course, action and maintaining those behaviors. And then with the full model, there's actually a really high chance for what's called relapse, which means I go back to my old behaviors. And so from a sustainable behavior change model, we want to factor that in. They've used it for tobacco cessation, they've used it for exercise, for nutrition, and nature as the fourth pillar of health and well-being also applies to the trans theoretical model.
Cool. Very cool, Sarah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I can read mine if you want, but or just give you an example. So I was
Please do.
saying, so I'm a developmental pediatrician myself. I'm taking a sabbatical right now, but to do nature work. So I will say I know a lot of pediatricians, a lot of doctors in general that are very supportive of this idea of time in nature, also are trying to find ways to decrease screen time, all the different things that we all know that are important for nature access for kids. And the main barriers we hear over and over again that come up are space or access to nature or where to go and what to do when you're out there, concerns about safety, and then time, just like parents, caregivers with a busy schedule, and the thought that a lot of people think that you have to go to like a national park to have access to nature. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but I've used specific approaches. And of course, in my recent work, I was seeing, children with developmental disabilities or with, neurodiversity. And so I would kind of I wasn't doing park RX per se, I wasn't prescribing, but I was doing kind of a step into that, I guess, using motivational interviewing, which I think is along the same lines that, what I was taught in med school, that's what Sarah's talking about. But kind of opening a conversation based on something that came up. So just one example that I give, there was a child that I found, I use books. So I use nature books and children's books with a lot of different pictures of nature in them. And when a child shows an interest in that, I kind of pointed out to the parent, or the parent is liking, for example, the fact that the child is, not having a meltdown because they're enjoying the book or enjoying the nature pictures, or sounds in some cases. And that becomes like a conversation about how they might do things in nature related to that child's interest in whatever it is. Birds was the case in one child. And a lot of children with neurodiversity have very specific, keen interests in things. So you can kind of, work with that. And that's just one example. I have a lot of different examples, but I think in talking to providers, physicians, clinicians, it just becomes so challenging with all the things that you have to discuss in a visit that you have to find some way to weave it in because there are, as you said, so many things to discuss. I think people are on board with the idea of it, um, trying to kind of implement it, and then having someone to help develop like local resources or something to give the parents is important. You know, what are the nature spaces nearby? So that's my input.
Renee, super helpful, and of course, from somebody who's been on the front lines of that. Thank you for sharing. And Renee, it makes me think also. Um, Again, I'm going to put my former hat on, working with Texas State Parks. We had the Texas Outdoor Family Program that teaches families how to go camping. We had ranger-led hikes and big outreach days. And in the connection I'm making, Renee, is you're right that spend time in nature is a lot different than spend time in nature. And here is a group that helps soften the blow of this new courageous thing you're going out and doing, because they offer supported kind of introduction to time in nature, familiarity with those kind of resources, not just the physical locations, and it seems like that can be helpful as well. Great. Other questions and comments out there? Um, Thank you all for some session feedback, or sorry, proposal rather, for the upcoming summit. Thank you, Sarah. Evaluation. And big thank you to you all for taking time out of your day to think about how we can connect more people to nature for their own benefit, for the benefit of greater conservation efforts as well. And just everybody contributing a lot of great thoughts. Sarah, final thoughts from you?
Yeah, so yes, thank you everyone for joining. I tried to keep track of resources as they were being shared. Um, Kai, if you're willing to share a PDF of the slides, I would love to include that when I send out the recording to everyone, and then y'all can get those QR codes because I know sometimes those get lost if you quite start scanning a bunch of them. So, um, but thank you, everyone. As we said, please take a moment to fill out our evaluation. That helps us both give feedback to Kai on the presentation and also for us to kind of know what people are looking for as we plan our webinars. We at Kai referenced a few times our summit in Houston. We'll have a summit this year in Bryan College Station, December 3rd through 5th. And the request for session proposals is currently open. So if any of you are interested in putting a proposal, we'd love to hear from you. We have a session Q&A scheduled for next week. So if you have questions about putting in a proposal, please join us for that. And then our next webinar is on the 31st, and it's Play, Move, Grow, the Power of Outdoor Spaces in Early Childhood. So would love to have you join us for that webinar as well. But thank you so much, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Get outside and enjoy the outdoors.
Thanks all. Thanks, Sarah. See y'all.